When people talk about crazy Gibson guitars, this is what they're talking about. Welcome back, troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. The day has finally come. That's right, guys, I found myself a Joe Bonamassa Bonabyrd. The weird Les Paul FIREBIRD mashup that we need to get out of this box pronto. So this was a limited edition in 2015 that Gibson partnered up with Joe Bonamassa to do, and it's one of the more well-known of the series because of how unique it is. They only made 100 of them. Each of them are hand-signed on the back. But let's go ahead and capture my first impressions of this guitar. It's Pelham blue, nice and metallic, and then we've got that headstock. Okay. I've always been on the edge about this one. Like, I've just recently really started to get into Firebirds, so I thought now was the right time. I actually purchased this from a viewer of the show, a Mr. James Cropper. He runs the Electric Lizard Studio if you need some recording stuff and you're in his area. But anyways, we've got so much to talk about on this thing because it's not really technically a Les Paul. It's called the Joe Bonamassa Bonabyrd because it's not really a Les Paul. I mean, it's Les Paul in body shape, right? And I wasn't quite sure about the neck, but yeah, that definitely feels a little bit more Les Paul-like to me. So you get the standard style inlays. You could also say a Firebird 5 has similar inlays, but this is definitely more so a Les Paul style neck. They called it the Joe Bonamassa profile. Then you get the Firebird headstock, and it's a true Firebird headstock. You get all of the big old banjo tuners back here. And then, as I was telling you earlier, each hand signed by Joe, and it's out of 100. This one happens to be 97. Sweet, almost one of the last ones in the run. But then continuing on our specs, I mean, we've got the humbucker pickups, right? But this has a wrap tail bridge, so it's like a Les Paul special in that aspect, except for, you know, it's a full-on Les Paul body style. They say they took the top car from a 57 Les Paul. It seems kind of flat, to be honest. Like, it has less of a belly profile than normal. And I guess you could say, well, hey, what about Firebird 1s and 3s? They're wrap tails, right? But generally, they don't have this style. It would be the lightning bar one. But when you have a model as cool as the Firebird and it's a unique headstock, I mean, why would you not put it on other models? Joe is actually not the first guy to do this. All the way back in the 60s, a guy named Trini Lopez. He did this to a 335, and it's called his signature Trini Lopez 335. Dave Grohl later adopted that guitar and produced his own signatures like that, but you've got 335s with these style headstocks on top of the Bonabyrd. But hey, Lizzie Hale actually has an Explorer custom made for her with one of these Firebird style headstocks. Maybe that'll become a new signature guitar for her, maybe not. I was still hoping we'd get her baritone Explorer next. But then you can also look back in history, like Explorers. They have a unique headstock. You can put them on other guitars. Like, you've got my Aldo Nova signature Les Paul. A Les Paul was something that's supposed to have straight string pull. That's kind of what they were going for here as well. Just trying to get a more straight string pull design on these because, you know, some guys, they're picky about that. So besides the Aldo Nova, you also got like the Studio Custom XPL, Flying V's with Explorer headstocks, whole bunch. But speaking of Flying V's, you know, Flying V headstocks can also be put on other guitars. Like, check out Billy Gibbons' SG that has a Flying V headstock on it. They're weird, goofy guitars, right? But when you have collections of guitars and you just want to be a little bit different, that's what these things are really great for. These were first introduced in 2015 at a staggering price tag of $7,899 brand new. Did these sell out instantaneously? No, because I didn't get into brand new guitars until about 2018, early 2018. And there were still these things brand new that I remember. In fact, go to Musician's Friend's website today, and you can actually still find one of these things brand new. They have it listed for $7,109 as a pre-order. And it's like, huh? I'm very confused. So I reached out to my rep and they said, yeah, we're supposed to be getting it in the next week or two. Maybe it's new old stock, maybe not. He couldn't really give me all the fine details. So, I mean, if you want one of these technically new old stock from 2015, they might be getting it. It might be worth a shot if you want to buy one of these brand new and have a warranty. First impressions, seems the condition's actually pretty good. I do have a pretty nasty finish check right here, but thankfully it's not actually stemming from the nut. It's a little bit before that, so I'm not too worried about that, so I think everything's good as far as that goes. But yeah, this top carve is a lot more shallow than I was expecting. I thought it'd have the nice big deep dish, but not all Les Pauls are like that. I think I would have personally enjoyed this a little bit more had we had like a Firebird neck pickup and then a bridge humbucker. That could have been cool, but he went for a little bit more of a traditional pickup setup here. And as far as case candy, what do we got going on in here? Regular Gibson custom hang tags and key, Gibson warranty manual, and hey, check this thing out. I think that's the best Joe Bonamassa signature COA I've seen. It's a very shiny silver color here. It says Gibson custom on the back. When you open it up, now his looks more like an aged Pelham blue, like that's what this is called too, and it's got a little bit of a yellowed lacquer to it, but it's not quite green like you can see here. Even his COA is green. Gotta say, I vastly prefer his greeny looking one. Oh, but that's his vanity model, as he calls it. It's got his signature on the fretboard inlaid, so he got custom aging. So these things are gonna look really cool in about 30, 40 years. So maybe accidentally leave it out in the sun or something. Our case is a little bit special too. JB on a pick design, and then it's just the regular custom shop as far as the rest. In case you're wondering who Joe Bonamassa is, he is a child prodigy who's played with many of the greats and has made a good name for himself. He's got a whole bunch of signature guitars. This is my first signature Gibson of his that I'm reviewing, but he's got a bunch of those there. We've done a couple of his Epiphones if you want to check those out. So if nothing else, Joe Bonamassa. He's a mean guitar player, and he can create some very interesting signature Gibsons and Epiphones. So love it or hate it, we're going to throw it on the workbench to take an individual look at its parts and specs. It's been a long time coming. Inside the Bonabyrd, let's check this thing out. So what kind of humbuckers do we have sleeping in here? They are Gibson's custom buckers. They just say patent applied for on the back with their water slide decals. Within the circuit, the middle position reads 4.04 k ohms, our neck position 7.84, and our bridge a little bit hotter than that at 8.34. Okay, so what's under our pickups? We have a long neck tenon. So that makes this a historic spec Les Paul, minus the headstock. And our bridge cavity looks like so. We can't actually see the two-piece maple top and solid mahogany body, but trust me, they're there. You can at least see the mahogany wood grain. If you want to know how I know it's a two-piece top besides spec sheets, if you get it in the light just right, you can actually see the seam line right here as it goes down the front of the instrument. I mean, that's not really something Gibson can necessarily help. As the finish ages, you can occasionally get those, especially on metallic finished guitars, like this one. But the spec sheets for these call for ultra lightweight mahogany. I think that was a bad idea because FIREBIRD headstocks are heavy with these big tuners on them. And I think that's why this guitar feels so weird to me, is the headstock is way heavier than a regular Les Paul. As far as our tailpiece, it's the wraparound style. You can adjust the intonation right here. It's not the lightning bar version, just a regular historic style one that's also lightweight. What's kind of unique about this one is the paint is still over top of the stud. Most times those end up chipping and flaking off by now. But just because these were introduced in 2015, I think it actually took them a little bit longer to produce all of them. So being one of the last ones of the 100 series, I'm sure this probably came out a little later. But what I'm really appreciating about this guitar is not only the beautiful color, but the stark white plastics they've got going with it. You don't normally find this on historic Les Pauls. They're generally like a creamy color. This is a blinding white, and it looks so good with this Pelham blue finish. You can kind of see the top carve a little bit right here. Again, they took that from an R7 gold top. So we'll just go around the edges here. The toggle switch cap kind of matches the slightly yellowed binding. But then when we get over to the knobs, you're going to see they're actually really hoisted up there. That's probably why we have a lot of internal cracking on all these knobs, is because as the case pushes down on them, it just kind of cracks them. Thankfully, they stay on tight, but that is a blemish within the knob itself. But we got the factory very sharp pointers on here to let you know what number you're on. I'd say this Les Paul looks pretty darn good without a pickguard. How's this for crazy? What if they would have went for a Florentine cut like the Les Paul Florentines? No, not the F-hold ones, we're talking this one, the one with the sharp cutaway. Because then you'd have even more weird features on here. And I had a commenter recently say, hey, has there ever been a neck-through Les Paul from Gibson? I don't think so. Not that I've ever ran into. I think it would just mess with the top, because it would have to be a raised section like a Firebird, but I kind of wish they would have done that. If they're going to do that, they would probably have to do it with like a Les Paul Special or another flat top Les Paul. Unless they're going to put the maple top over top of that. I mean, I guess they could play with it. But anyways, enough brainstorming. Here's what our pickguard looks like. It's also white. It's the full-on, really thick historic plastic. That's nice quality stuff. And this one still has the tone sticker, as it's so lovingly referred to on guitar forums. I like it pickguard on and pickguard off. It's hard to choose. Your output jack plate is also the really thick plastic kind. Moving on from our maple top mahogany body, we've got a mahogany neck with the rosewood fretboard, 22 medium jumbo style frets with acrylic trapezoid inlays. The fretboard is bound just like the rest of the body. The nylon nut measures 1.69 inches. That increases to 2.06 by the 12th. First fret neck depth, 0.92. I'm going to take it at the 11th fret because the heel's kind of starting. That becomes a 1. But at the 12th, it's 1.02. It just gradually starts to get really chunky in that area. So that's actually a pretty darn big neck, which most Firebirds are a little bit flatter. So that's why I say it's more so a Les Paul neck, but not quite R7 baseball bat territory. Definitely C-shape, but let's go ahead and grab that on the contour gauge. Here's what that neck looks like at the 1st fret and the 12th fret. Just a very rounded C-shape. Moving on to the face of the headstock, I'm very glad that they gave it the reverse Firebird headstock. Now I think it would have been cool to have this exact same one pointing the other way, because then it reminds me a bit more of the Aldo Nova, but I love that it's the 2-tiered headstock design, and it's got the right kind of tuners. Like, if you're gonna do Firebird, you might as well do it right. There you can see how the truss rod was likely set from the factory. Everything looks okay there. But if you're wondering what this is, that's the maple block that caps off the truss rod channel inside the neck. And here's what the truss rod cover looks like. It just says Gibson, 1-ply black. Before we continue on here, one more guitar that I feel is very appropriate to mention here is what is the exact opposite of this guitar. This is Les Paul body Firebird headstock, but how about Les Paul headstock Firebird body? Check out the Tak Matsumoto signature. Unfortunately, I haven't reviewed one yet, but trust me, it's on my radar, and I've come close a few times. And it's only natural, right? Especially after reviewing this thing. So now we swap on over to the backside. So this was birthed when they were doing the medallions yet. They're still doing them yet today. It has the thin binding in the cutaway, so very historically spec'd guitar otherwise. But interestingly enough, a black backplate that doesn't actually appear to fit 100% perfectly. Let's go ahead and pop that off. There we go. Now this is interesting. So they talked about the R7 carved top, and I never knew that this was supposed to be legitimately an R7. You can see it stamped right there in the corner. I know things are in the way, but trust me, it says R7. So this is just a straight up 57 reissue body. You've got your Bumblebee capacitors in here, all wired up historically, so that's actually pretty cool to see. Other than that, just a beautiful back here. We already saw the output jack earlier, but you've got your strap buttons in your regular locations, which I'll be curious to see if it still balances using those. But then we move up the back side of this neck. Everything's looking nice here. So we'll take a quick look at that finish check there. Now, if that would have stemmed from like right here and went down here, I'd be scared. But that's not a typical break area, and you can definitely feel that's just in the finish. You can't even feel it with your nail. Unless you go really slowly, but even then I'm not really scared that that's in the wood. Because it looks like it comes from the top of the nut, so that probably got jostled in shipping or something. Otherwise, this thing's in really clean shape. And hey, there we go. We have his signature and number 97 with our chrome banjo style tuners. You always gotta look around the headstocks of these because Firebird headstocks, they're easy to ding against things. But it looks like we're doing okay there. All said and done, this one weighs a little over 9 pounds. 9 pounds, 1.1 ounces. Let's go ahead and hear how the Bonabyrd sounds. All right, moment of truth. Is it neck heavy? Surprisingly not. It's well balanced. I thought for sure the ultra lightweight mahogany and this heavy old headstock was going to cause us issues, but no. In fact, now that I have this in playing position on a strap, I kind of understand it a little bit better because Firebirds, they're just cool. That's why I like them. They're headstocks. They're big and gaudy, a little bit flashy, especially when you get the matching colored headstock. So you get that, but with a Les Paul and an R4-like setup, except for kind of Jeff Beck-esque with the humbuckers. I mean, there's a whole bunch of influences that you can get out of this thing. So I don't know, maybe I was converted, maybe not. It's maybe not my favorite Les Paul mashup in the world so far, but let's go ahead and get some tones, because I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised by the middle position, but let's try that neck first. Try the same riff on the bridge. But the middle kind of gets some Firebird-esque tones, very chimey. Really dig the cleans out of this thing. Now, something that I noticed is a little bit strange is I didn't change the strings on this from the guy I got it from, since they still felt very clean, but I think I have 2 low D strings. Because check that out, wound G string, but it's so strange, but I like it at the same time. Because I don't have a very good trained hand, so a lot of times I bend notes out of tune. So having a really thick string on the G string, it gives you some interesting tones. Alright, let's go ahead and try it with some distortion.
Now that we know all about the Joe Bonamassa Bonabyrd, what are my final thoughts on this thing, now having some experience playing it? Gotta say, I am impressed. I wasn't expecting to like this guitar as much as I did. Because even though I'm a weird, quirky Les Paul lover guy, this one's always been just a little bit too abstract for me. Or maybe it's just that they didn't go crazy enough, like swapping out pickups like we were talking about earlier. I think the only modification I wish they would have done to this is take a page out of Kazuyoshi Saito's book and do that whole access heel carve on one of these. That would have made this guitar like nearly perfect in my eyes, because that'd just be another quirky spec that makes it so comfortable to play. This balances on a strap really well. You feel really cool with the FIREBIRD headstock. It plays very nicely as well. These pickups, very impressed with those, especially that middle position if you're trying to get some FIREBIRD-esque tones out of this thing. But just in case you were wondering, feeling a FIREBIRD side by side with the Bonabyrd, yeah, these are way different feeling necks. They're definitely a lot wider feeling, so that is totally a Les Paul neck, just like I thought. Although that would have been interesting if they would have put a straight up FIREBIRD neck on that, because that's not a neck profile you normally find on a Les Paul. Now, do I suggest everybody go rush out and purchase one of these? No, I mean, these are mainly collector's instruments because they're kind of expensive, or for somebody who just wants to gig out something a little bit more unique. However, since you have the signature artist attached with this one, people are going to think you're a Bonamassa fan, so it's kind of hard to claim this as your own when it's already somebody else's claimed as their own. But hey, it's a cool guitar. I would suggest playing one if you ever see one in a store. Does the FIREBIRD headstock help it stay in tune better? I mean, a little bit. I still had to do a whole bunch of tweaking. But what's nice is when you tune a FIREBIRD headstock, when you're in playing position anyways, it's real easy to see which tuner you need to get to. Whereas Les Pauls, they're sticking out the side. You gotta reach around the side. So it's a little bit easier in that aspect. However, for like a guitar tech guy, yeah, these are a real big pain in the butt to tune up on a bench. But anyways, troglodytes, if you're interested in being the next owner of this particular Bonabyrd, you can find it on my website or check it out on Reverb. But now my question for you guys is, hey, which one of these pulls off the FIREBIRD headstock better? Alright, troglodytes, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will catch you tomorrow on the next episode. Take care.